Welcome to episode 73 of the XRM Toolcast. In this episode, Scott and I speak with Microsofties Casey Burke and Prabhat Pandey on the new PowerFx commanding that may already be released and available in GA to some of our listeners. Other ones you may have to wait a little bit depending on your geo. But this is finally the replacement for the Ribbon Workbench. And it is going to be using PowerFx, which means that low coders can get in there right now and start playing with it and using it and being able to use the same commanding, same PowerFX that they're used to using in Canvas apps. So it's like a win-win for everybody, and it still can do JavaScript stuff as well. So really excited for this to be released, and really excited to spend some time with Casey and Prabhat today, and just to hear what went on, how it was created, and some of the challenges they had to overcome to bring this feature to all of us. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XRM Toolcast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and Scott, the commanding commander, Daryl. Scott, how's it going?
Very well, thanks, Daryl. Yeah, that kind of makes me sound like like some sort of maritime commander. I did do a session called, Command and Conquer once, which was a bit of play on Command Bar. Yeah. See, I was very pirate. Yeah, it's very much a pirate buccaneer type thing. But yeah, it's going well.
Oh, I was thinking the Command and Conquer video game from like the mid '90s.
Well, yes, I have. Yeah, I've been watching a show on Netflix actually. But it's called, I can't remember what it's called now, but it's about like the '90s evolution of video games. I've been watching it with my youngest because he's like into Minecraft and all that kind of stuff. It's like all kids seem to be and I don't say kids, like adults alike, right? But he's using a server which is doing like coding and stuff in Minecraft. It's awesome. It's like these coding blocks and it's like low code. I was looking at it, I was thinking, this is like a low code programming language. But yeah, it kind of requires you to be an expert in Minecraft before you can use it. So there's a little bit of a steep learning curve there for me, but for him, it's natural.
We were staying at a VRBO, and they had a Super Nintendo like box one. It wasn't original, but it had 10 games on it. And they played Mario Kart on it, and like your eyes were bleeding just because the graphics were so bad. And I was like, I don't remember it being this bad. But wow,
I know. Yeah,
like I didn't even
especially when it's like rendered up at like HD and this size, and it's just
70-inch TV. And all all right. Well, we have a couple great guests from Microsoft here joining us today, talking about PowerFx commanding here. I'll go ahead and introduce him. Our first guest is Prabhat Pandey. He is the engineering leader at the Microsoft PowerFx Platform Group. He is a seasoned engineer leader and strategist with rich experience in building and running large-scale online services. He also has an extensive domain experience in building and releasing multiple versions of Microsoft CRM product, Power Apps, and related cloud services. And if any of that stuff is false, I read it straight off this LinkedIn page, so he can correct me and he can go fix that at his leisure. Also joining us is Casey Burke, a senior program manager at Microsoft. He is writing the future for a low-code product suite of business applications. So that's a great tagline, right?
Maybe I should copy some stuff from Prabhat's profile. I don't know. It sounded more sophisticated.
So welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for joining us. We have to be careful what we talk about and ask about, because not everything is quite here yet, except I think tomorrow. Well, actually, this isn't going to go release until I think a week from Sunday. So you've got, if something is going to go live between then, we can actually talk about it, not have to worry about breaking NDA. But otherwise, we'll try to stay away from that, just to make your guys' job safe and our MVP-ness safe as well. That's always kind of the most important thing in this show, right, Scott?
Yeah, indeed.
So brand new stuff coming out. The PowerFx commanding. Who wants to start first to kind of what this is, or what this is going to be, or what if people aren't familiar with it, or maybe even what your involvement is with it? I guess there's lots of places we can start. So.
And I think where it started, that's what I'm really interested in, is how long ago did it first? Where were you involved when there was like in a room saying, hey, what we need to do is this, let's just hear it from you, where it came from.
The master plan.
yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, as we think about model-driven apps, or, really what was CRM, and that's the space I started in many years ago, we have a command bar and it runs most of the application. You have a button up there, you click it, and it performs some action. And we've never actually had a first-party command designer, though. Luckily, Scott here put out the Ribbon Workbench, and that's kind of been the unofficial command designer for years and years. And it's been awesome. It's got a lot of people through it. So yeah, basically, I guess the history kind of started. What was it, about a year and a half ago, Prabhat? Mm-hmm. So we went through what we call a reorg, where some things got kind of shuffled around between different teams, and that's when Prabhat and I started working together. At commanding kind of landed on our plate. And this was actually a really highly problematic area, something that we call IPD, or incidents per day, which is just the support case volume that's coming in for a given feature set, right? Commanding it was kind of designed for the Ribbon, which we no longer have. We have command bars, and it was a very custom and complex implementation that, in many ways doesn't work out all that well for UCI, given it came with a lot of baggage and things from the Ribbon. So that was kind of our first initiative was, how do we free up the engineers and really make a difference for our customers that are running so many problem areas in this space? And, kind of went back and forth a lot and came down to, we had to rebuild this thing. It's not really fixable all the way. And so we kind of spun up two work streams, let's try to fix all the issues we can on the classic stuff, but also let's go rebuild something that new. And that's in many ways, can be kind of a tough sale a little bit, given the point in time we're at in the product. And some of those reasons are we have classic designers still that haven't been modernized. And so when you come in and pitch a command designer, it's well, we have our existing stuff that we haven't even gotten over yet. Why should we go build new stuff right now? So really it came down to just kind of timing. And, we were also, Prabhat and I were working on this too for custom pages. And kind of the convergence of model-driven and Canvas technologies. And that's really kind of what it came down to was we need to do something in low code, no code that's going to work across Canvas and model-driven apps and make that story a lot better, while also addressing, all the issues that we had on support case volume and all that stuff. So really, I think that was kind of the, timing was really the factor there, because the command designer has been pitched, as I understand, many times throughout history. But yes. I think it's a tough sell when you say, we're going to go put a no-code designer and you still have to use JavaScript. It's well, what's the point of that if you can't go fully low code? And so PowerFx really gave us that. Now it can be low code in that aspect.
Because it's funny you're saying about this being pitched a lot of times, because I've had sort of contact with various different teams over the years. The Ribbon Workbench was 10 years old last year. So and I've had various people reach out to us saying, "Oh, look, we're adding in a designer," but it was very much a designer to simulate what the Ribbon Workbench did, rather than reimagining it, which is what I think what you've done. That's the key. I mean, it was kind of a bizarre situation for me to find that I was getting job postings, for people saying, you must have experience in the Ribbon Workbench, and I was applying to these job postings, and
that's a must have.
Yeah, so it was a kind of a strange. So I was just assuming that it's going to be a short-lived thing, it was going to. But then I guess because of that problem you were talking about, it's a hard pitch when there are other priorities. So I'm guessing that the fact that you got the low-code side of things and the PowerFX piece coming in, I'm guessing that must have made it easier, did it, in getting it pitched to be a sort of reimagined type interface?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it came down to, we have to converge the different app types, and that's been a core goal that we were already working on, right? And so we'd actually spun up a POC when we came in and kind of, made our pitch that really landed, and was this is what it could look like with PowerFX and with custom pages. Not only that, but having a command designer right in the product. And so, I think those things kind of landed at the right time, and it was pretty cool.
And just to add here, it was so problematic, and with so much of like app teams, like different types of apps getting launched, and a lot of customization and layerings, and on top of that, customers customizing, ISVs customizing, it becomes so complex that for normal developer, it was near impossible to understand what's going on, when their change is going to work, and when it will get overwritten by someone else. And that was the main reason of IPD term that Casey used here. So many issues, and often it was not obvious. So we wanted to take a step back and see what we can do with one giant monolithic XML definition that we have, with so much of legacy properties that we have to manage versus what that future looks like. So with tens of years of experience dealing with those ribbons and all, we took a step back, reimagined, and took input from everyone that we could, including our great friend here, Scott, actually. And we took all those learnings, and then we reimagined, redesigned, gave pitch to our leadership multiple rounds, and we said, hey, it's possible, we can do it. It's a very large undertaking. And complexity was so high that previously it was not touched as well. Obviously, it's a very complex problem to solve. So when these two things came together, our canvas and model together, and we had kind of resources and time as well to go and look into this one, and we wanted to really make it simple for Power Apps Maker to be able to build apps, add buttons, and that's how we got it funded, and we started this journey 1.5 years ago. Go ahead, please.
This is 1.5 years into it. You guys have been working on this then.
Yeah.
It's always a long cycle with anything. You gotta get folks bought into the idea at first, then we start going through design cycles and get the UX teams involved before you ever even start really working on anything. And just releasing it is quite the process too.
I know no manager likes to hear, hey, we have to redo everything. So who did you have to make that pitch to? Is it like one person? Was it a board of people? And who was the person that said, all right, I think we have enough ammunition to go and say, trying to maintain what we have is bad, and we're throwing good money after bad. In this case, let's just redo it with the experience that we have from that. Like how does that process work within Microsoft? That's just kind of interesting to me.
And who did the pitch as well? Did he? Which one of it? Which one of it did that pitch, or did you do it as a double act?
There's multiple people involved. Prabhat and I were definitely there presenting, but yeah, it really depends on kind of the scale of what you're proposing. Like, how big is this? How many people are going to need to work on it? And do we have multiple teams involved, or is it something like just your individual team can focus on? So for stuff that, say if it was just mine and Prabhat's engineering team, we wouldn't have needed to go too far up the food chain. It's kind of more like, our immediate managers, hey, I think we should be doing this. Here's some data to back up, customers complaining about a certain problem maybe. But for something like this, there's quite a few teams involved. And so, we had to bring in the expression language team. I think you guys know Greg Lindhorst and them, the PowerFX runtime team. And that was new. We hadn't really worked with them on too many projects in the past. We typically work on ALM stuff, which is more, we're working with Dataverse folks and things like that. So at this level, it went up to just Power Apps leadership. So basically Ryan Cunningham and then Gio. And we gave the pitch in one of our regular reviews with them. And then, they asked kind of for some more information. We refined the proposal a little bit, came back. And I think at the same time, we're working on a POC, right? Prabhat, like a proof of concept. And so we did something basic where we showed like a PowerFX command running in a model-driven app. And that kind of was like the wow factor. Wow, you could actually do that. Okay, cool.
I love how those two things have so much synergy. The custom pages, building PowerFX so it can run inside model-driven apps, and then modern commanding. It's almost like they're all part of the same thing, which is this app convergence effort to be able to bring all of the best parts of Canvas and PowerFX into the world of model-driven. And Prabhat, when you were talking about like making it good for a maker experience, making that maker experience really so that it becomes just the same as creating any other app. I think that, to me, that makes a huge difference. But I mean, from a technical perspective, has there been any sort of challenges that you can talk about? Some of the things that were what really kind of caused some. You had to really scratch your head and get around that whiteboard, and
Yeah, what was way harder than you thought it would be, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, like there are many, I would say. The first problem was, and like our data was PowerFX leadership, one of the clear instruction was, whatever we are building, we don't want to have another run one effort where customers has to spend so much time. We have to come up with design architecture which allows coexistence, old and new both. And that is the reason you see in UCI, it's same button, both legacy and this one, they just like work together. There's no difference for the customers, whether like that button is coming from app actions, new format or old format. So that was number one problem. So coming up with that right design, zero disruption for the customer. So that was number one principle. And we are in this software as a service world, number one low code platform in the planet. We have big responsibility here to not disrupt existing business of our customers. So that was number one problem. Second problem is, of course, that we are still solving, and we have the solution for that, migrating from old to new format. And old format, you have a ribbon that out of box, example, activities we are shipping, and then sales app modifies, then marketing modifies, then customer service modified, then there are ISV solutions, they modified, and then customers have their own solution, they modified. So one button, there are so many visibility rules, so many customization rules. We have to come up with a design and mechanism to migrate it seamlessly without having impact, disruption for any of those players. And once everything is migrated, then only the new buttons, they will be visible. So this was like another challenge, and like we have very elegant solution for that. Third problem was the ALM life cycle of these new definitions that we have has to be like very, very elegant. We did not want it to repeat the past mistake, and we had so much learning, so we wanted to apply those. And the last was the fourth one, this whole low-code PowerFX that we have, it comes from our Canvas technology that we have, and both model and Canvas are merged together. That's the Power Apps. There are multiple microservices, how we integrate them together so they work seamlessly. And it's not easy problem. When there are like different release schedules, there are different versions, there are different technologies, publishing mechanism. So solving all those together was a big effort indeed. But we have amazing, great engineers inside Microsoft, particularly on the PowerFX team, work together with all the great architects and senior engineers, and that allowed us to offer this in a very integrated way.
Oh, obviously, it's a lot to do with the leadership as well. I mean, there's just the engineering team is great, but obviously the two great people we have with us today, I think they are probably largely to do with it as well.
And kudos to our leaders here, particularly Ryan and Gio, interesting and believing us that this is something that can be built, and they had great desire to solve this problem, and provided all the necessary support and funding. And we had really amazing architects within the Power Apps who supported this wholeheartedly. That really helped. And when this was pitched to the Charles and presented over there, Charles really liked it. So we had to go ahead to go and build it and deliver it.
You're like, yes, I mean, we've got that go ahead. I mean, if any of our listeners hasn't tried it out, I really highly recommend it, because it's a really slick experience, right from right inside the app designer, being able to just sort of, create buttons and actually have PowerFX expressions. And incidentally, it's worth noticing, it's worth mentioning, I think, that you can also run JavaScript as well, right? I mean, it's funny, actually, Prabhat, you mentioned ALM, because that's one of the things a lot of people, over the history of the Ribbon Workbench, has had a lot of conversations with people like struggling. And more recently, not only just simply, managing diffs and making sure that you don't ship changes to the ribbon that you don't want to, because like the ribbon XML is sort of bundled in with an entity and you can't exclude it, that kind of thing. But also being able to make buttons only appear for specific apps. So, could you just give us a little sort of overview for people who are just sort of makers, really, model-driven makers, how that works and, how they can expect to be using it?
Yeah, I think I'll just add here, I started my journey as a CRM developer with 30 engineers team to begin with. And there are like many thousand developers working now. And so one thing, like a traditional CRM was just like one organization, and there is just like one set of customization, and then we have customer service, marketing, sales applications working together. There was just like one application, and then we had the concept of module. But ultimately, you will launch one and then go to navigate to one of those applications. That's no longer the case. We have evolved many times now, right? Now we have different types of applications, and there is a real need that we need proper app-based buttons scope. And so we solved it through proper scoping of these definitions so that buttons are scoped to a particular app. And that was like one of the P0 primary requirement for us to like build and deliver. So this is like one big advantage compared to the previous model that we have. And not just this one, there are like many benefits, particularly Casey, who has been like, ISV and developer in the system for a very long time. He knew all the problem, everything what needs to be done exactly. And he spent countless hours working with many folks, got a lot of requirements, put that into the product, had multiple review with all the stakeholders, got the feedback with our design teams to come up with the best UX representation on the designer side. As you see, like you mentioned, that designer is like really great looking. Kudos to Casey here, actually, who put together all these proposals working with our awesome designer teams.
Nice one.
I call these guys the brains behind the operation. I just gotta talk a lot and go to a lot of meetings.
But it is very nice to just have the ability to see your command bar and drop your ribbons on and add your expressions in there and do it as you'd expect any other kind of designer, really. I use the Ribbon Workbench, very almost, on a, if not daily basis, on a weekly basis. I don't know about you, Daryl, but if you build, anybody who's building stuff at the moment with model-driven apps, it's a common thing to use regularly.
I used it a lot when I was in consulting, for sure. Yeah. It's a great tool.
When commanding V2 goes GA, do we stop using the Ribbon Workbench? What would be the reasons why we'd carry on using the Ribbon Workbench, if there are any reasons, or do we just wholesale move over and just start using command V2?
Scott just wants to know if he can retire. So go ahead.
Yeah. Honestly, Daryl, I'm not going to be retiring for a very long time.
It's going to depend on the maker, right, and what they want to be able to do with things. A big part of our GA push was going back and filling the parity gaps that we had during preview, between modern and classic commanding, because we added a bunch of new things, but at the same time, there were certain things that are still really common use cases that just haven't been there during the previews. So you mentioned scoping. Where it is now, if you customize something that's for this specific app, it doesn't cross application boundaries. But there's still a lot of use cases for people they want to publish a single button and have it visible across a lot of different apps, either for that table specifically and have it show up in all the other apps, or even across all tables and all apps within the environment. And even like as first party stuff, we have, shared commands between, say, sales and marketing and sales and customer service. So we still have to support those scenarios as well as we think about, migrating the classic commands now over to modern infra.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I guess back to your question about the Ribbon Workbench, I think a lot of the parity gaps are going to be filled, but there are certain things, and that's what it's going to come down to your scenario. So smart buttons, right? Those are pretty cool, and not that it was really a classic commanding feature, but Scott made the feature, right, and made it kind of low code. So there's things like that, and then there's, if you think about the global application header, we, at least from our telemetry, we don't see it being customized very often at all, and so that wasn't a priority right now. Same thing with dashboard command bars. So there's a few kind of smaller things like that we see as less common, but at the same time, there's always an adoption curve, right? And people have been using the Ribbon Workbench for years, and I don't think it's going to happen overnight where everybody just all of a sudden switches over, right?
Scott's going to change his little ad in the Ribbon Workbench and say, hey, you probably shouldn't be using this. That's what's going to happen. And it's going to help to drive the adoption of, you need to go use this thing over here.
Click here to open the modern command designer. Yeah. Signposting, that's what I'll be. I'll basically be a tool that just signposts somewhere else.
That'll be our next feature for about when you open Ribbon Workbench, you get a big picture of Scott. We'll add that into command designer.
Yes. Well, I can give you the statistics of people opening the Ribbon Workbench and clicking on the button that I take, and then you can give me the same statistics of the people that come back the other way. Two-way street.
By the way, anyone who is on-prem system, they would still use it. I think, but majority of folks, they are moving to online. Online has proven it to be much more efficient, a lot of new capabilities. But there are still few customers over there. I think they will still want to use it.
Yeah, I do get a lot of. There is a degree of telemetry I can see from the XRM Toolbox about that, and I do get. Yeah, there's a lot of people using the Ribbon Workbench to customize online. 8.2, sorry, on-prem. 8.2 even. And I have the occasional support ticket comes in and then I have to because I've made an update that assumes a particular bit of metadata is going to be available, and obviously it doesn't work. So yeah, I think that, that was going to be one of my questions as well. And obviously, presumably, PowerFX is not going to be something that's going to be coming to on-prem anytime soon. So it would only be JavaScript anyway if it was there.
Yeah, and I think too.
Do you see the standard dev person spending much time doing PowerFX, or are they going to still live in their more JavaScript-y world for that, or where do you see them landing on that?
It's kind of both, right? We talk about the citizen developer a lot and having lower entry points to get into kind of the coding space, and it's simpler to get started than perhaps something like JavaScript. But what we see a lot of is professional developers that it's just faster and quicker to write a function than write out TypeScript or JavaScript or whatever it might be. And so we've actually seen a massive adoption coming over from Azure developers and or even just Dynamics developers that have been picking up Canvas technology and working in that space a lot.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? With PowerFX and the whole declarative story. It's one of those things that you start using, and once I certainly see this, once folks start using it, and getting over perhaps a suspicion of something that's I am losing control, or I can't do exactly what I want to do, then actually they find that it's easier, quicker, and potentially over time just going to be a lot easier to maintain, and lower cost of ownership, and maybe even more performant. As the platform evolves, the platform presumably will optimize PowerFX always, whereas folks that are writing JavaScript are not always going to constantly be going back and revisiting their JavaScript to make sure it's always using the latest features of the platform.
Right, absolutely. And like PowerFX in the future, it's very simple, standard, one knowledge actually everywhere that can be used. And it's more geared toward low-code makers, people who are not familiar with the JavaScript. JavaScript, I still consider, it's simple enough, but you can do anything that you want over there, right? So that's high code, kind of low code, high code, both you can say JavaScript here, but like PowerFX, like very simple.
I used to think JavaScript was low code.
Yes, that's right. It's all relative, right? It's all relative. Yeah, I mean, like we're always pushing the boundaries as an industry. It's like it's not like assembly language or C++. You constantly we're moving up in that abstraction. Exactly. Yeah. Well, so it's becoming GA soon. I don't know. We can't obviously. I don't know when that date's going to be, but soon, right? Unless you can tell us. I guess is that something you can tell us, Casey, or can you just say soon?
It's very soon. It's a complex feature set with a lot of interdependencies and release trains, so it's a little bit tough to give an exact date publicly, just because if one train gets delayed for the release or a bug happens somewhere, you just never know. There's a lot of unknowns with it. So we have a target in mind, but that can change day by day. So, but it's very, very soon.
How will people know when it becomes GA and it's like, right, we can start using it in production? Well, is there going to be a little firework display going off in the Maker portal or something?
Oh, that's a good idea. But yeah, so we like to do blog announcements on, kind of once it's rolled out and everywhere really, and you can make that statement. That said, we don't ship like every single feature at once. Since we opened up the preview, we've been adding things in incrementally since then. And so I want to say our GA does have a lot of stuff in one package, and we typically try to space it out a little more. It just kind of landed that way. But yeah, look out for a blog. We'll be updating the docs as well, just to remove the tags. And obviously in the product, you won't see the preview tags. So that's another good indicator.
It'll be GA, ready to use, ready to abuse, and ready to fill the fancy of low code people everywhere, or people that just don't like Scott and don't want to use the Ribbon Toolbench. So there's probably a large
sorry. What did you just call it, Daryl?
Ribbon Toolbench.
The Ribbon Toolbench.
Ribbon Toolbench. I'm just combining things. My hair is going, my memory is going. It's all. I'm gonna have a teenager this year.
If I was Jonas, right? If I was Jonas, I'd get really, really upset about that. But
he got upset at me this week for when I posted all the downloads for the XRM Toolcast. I just had the American Standard date format on there, and he's like, "What are you using that date for, kid?" I was like,
Jonas and his date.
Sorry, blame the American education system. I still count things in miles and pounds. What can I do?
ISO date format for the win. That's what I say. Let's go all the way. So, what's coming up next then? After GA, obviously you're probably going to take some well-deserved time off. I'm guessing, or at least a long weekend, or something like
long
that.
Lunch break, something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have kind of a quick stop that's like a GA fast follow is what we're calling it. It's things that just kind of missed the GA train but are super important still. So one of those are migration capabilities. And so if you think about all our stuff that's on classic commands, we're going to do that in phases, right? It's not going to be like, one day just everything's going to be on V2, right? It'd be a little bit risky if we did that actually, but anyway, so that's going to be happening incrementally. And then the next thing you'll see too is the ability for customers to migrate their stuff over. So we had to make a decision basically that we keep the command designer locked for classic things because it would have opened up a whole can of worms of stuff that could go wrong there. So Migration is going to be very, very simple. Basically, just click a button, we'll migrate your solution over to V2 for you. Then we're continuing to add just support for a lot of different PowerFX functions. And then within that, you probably noticed like the command component library. You can just have one of them for a model-driven app. So in that fast follow for GA, we want to be able to support multiple different component libraries, so you could import one in, those types of things.
And so that enables sort of layering multiple solutions, kind of combining them together, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and just
Nice.
general reuse, if you will, if you want to take things from one app and put it in another app without recreating everything.
Nice.
And recommendation at this time is, if there is a new button, absolutely go and use these, like the B2 buttons definition. That's so lot easier. You can try JavaScript, PowerFX, both are supported. And already, actually, like I think like it's close to 6 months we have been in preview, and we have many thousands of users using it daily already. Actually, so there is quite a lot of usage during preview itself. Actually, so net this whole service is pretty stable at this time, but we want to make sure that everything is correct and then announce GA. That quality is very important, because at the moment like we say yes, the floodgate will open, and we want to be extremely sure that everything is fine.
Remember when we started this, we talked about reliability was pretty bad on Classic, and so that's super important on the new model, especially as we go GA. That it has to be very rock solid.
And Ribbon is one. Go ahead, please.
So, as a contractor that may or may not have completely abided by the rules of not touching undocumented stuff when it comes to ribbons previously, like, oh, this out of the box ribbon is calling this JavaScript, or I need to do XYZ, so let me do that first and then call my JavaScript. Is that going to break or potentially break with this changes, or just with the change, the JavaScript doesn't change at all and you're just changing how it's getting called, and so theoretically those unsupported changes would still probably function just fine? Or what level of change to the actual like framework is that going to resolve in?
They can't
Are you
answer
asking if
that,
we're going to
Daryl.
support your unsupported stuff?
No,
They
not
can't
support.
What are you trying to get,
I'm going to
Daryl?
have to go support my stuff.
You're trying to get it on record so that, it's like, well,
It's supported now.
Bart said that it was supported.
Okay.
I mean, I guess without making that statement, JavaScript is relatively unchanged between classic and modern, so any of your old stuff should be running fine on the new infra. And really, like the UCI runtime side of that too, we actually convert it in a manner from the new model back into a format that UCI already understood. So shouldn't see any changes there.
Do you know what my favorite feature is? And this is may seem completely just treacherous to you that have worked so hard on all of the features. Do you know what my favorite feature is? The fact that you can select from an icon in a drop down.
Select from an icon in the drop.
The
Like
font
when you're
icons
actually.
that we have.
I mean, there's all this engineering effort that's gone in, right? And all this ability to bring in low code expressions. But I'm easily pleased. The fact that you've got all these cool icons, just a nice drop down, rather than, having to go and hunt around and find an icon and then import it as a web resource and then, kind of going and selecting it and using it that way.
Well, I'm excited to get to a point where I'm going to start using this again. My current project, I'm not even like touching CRM now. Other people are doing CRM, and I'm doing something else in the back end. So I've kind of been the person under the rock that hasn't been seeing all the stuff that's coming through. So I'm excited to get back to the day where I can go, all right, I need to do a ribbon. Let me go use this new stuff. Not that I don't like the Ribbon Toolbench, but maybe go use the new stuff and get excited about it. So I'm looking forward to that day, and I thank you very much to our guests for joining us. Casey, Prabhat, if there's any, if our listeners have any questions, or if they want to get a hold of you, or if they just want to follow you, where can they do that at? What's your not your necessary email? What's your social accounts or whatever else? LinkedIn? Where are you at?
Yeah, for me, LinkedIn, the best location.
All right. Cool. You can read that awesome intro I gave you.
LinkedIn a little more. On Twitter very occasionally. I think it's Casey Burke 21. His first name, last name 21. And I actually don't know my LinkedIn off the top of my head, but you can just search for my name and see it pop up. Hopefully there's not too many Casey Burkes in the world.
I'm looking for you now. Casey Burke 21. I'm seeing you. Nope, I didn't see Scott show up everywhere. Why is that? Oh, because he's adding you. Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. Normally I read the Twitter introductions, but I was having trouble finding you. So you just list program manager, full-time husband and dad. So cool. All right.
Awesome title. Awesome title.
Awesome title. Awesome title. Scott, that's how our listeners can get a hold of our guests. How can our listeners get a hold of us?
Well, yes, absolutely. We would love to hear from you. You can get a hold of us on email at cast@xrmtoolbox.com, or you can get us on Twitter, LinkedIn, social media at xrmtoolcast. So let us know how you've enjoyed this episode and any suggestions for future episodes as well. Mm-hmm. Or if you've got a new tool that you'd like us to get in touch with you about.
Sure. Thanks so much for having us, and Scott for the close collaboration as we've been working on this feature for quite a while now. Just thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on the show. It's been great having you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
See ya.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
This has been the XRM Toolcast with Daryl and Scott Darrell. Produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com, tweet @xrmtoolcast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn XRM Toolcast page.